The assistant, William Carter, had everything: power, wealth, and an iron heart. But when a determined 7-year-old hands him a job application to help his sick mom, William's world shifts. Is this boy just another case, or the one who will teach him what truly matters? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun bounced off the glass walls of the Carter building, the tallest skyscraper in the business district. William Carter stood at his office window, looking down at the city he practically owned. At 52, he had everything money could buy: luxury cars, vacation homes around the world, and a reputation as the toughest businessman in town. "Mr. Carter, your 9 o'clock meeting is ready," said Nancy, his assistant of 15 years, from the doorway. William straightened his expensive tie. "Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes." Nancy nodded and closed the door behind her. William took one last look at the view before turning to his desk. The latest financial report showed another successful quarter. Carter Industries had crushed its competition once again. The boardroom fell silent as William entered. 10 executives in tailored suits sat around the long table, nervously shuffling papers. "The Miller deal," William said without greeting anyone. "What's happening with it?" James Peterson, the head of acquisitions, cleared his throat. "They're still holding out, sir. They want double what we're offering." William's face hardened. "Then we'll wait until they're desperate, cut off their supply lines, make sure none of our partner companies work with them. They'll come crawling back in a month." No one disagreed. No one ever disagreed with William Carter. "Is that all?" William asked, already standing to leave. "Actually, sir," Nancy said from the corner of the room, "you have that charity photo op at 2 o'clock. The children's shelter downtown." William frowned. "Cancel it. I don't have time for that today. But, sir, the press will be there. It's important for the company image." "Fine," William cut her off. "1 hour, not a minute more." Later that afternoon, William's sleek black car pulled up to a rundown building in the poorest part of the city. The sign above the door read, "Hope Harbor Children's Shelter." William buttoned his suit jacket and put on his best public smile. As he stepped out of the car, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes greeted him at the entrance. "Mr. Carter, we're so honored you could make it. I'm Susan Miller, the director." William shook her hand briefly. "Let's make this quick. Where do you want me to stand for the photos?" Susan's smile faltered slightly. "I thought you might like to meet some of the children first. They're very excited." William checked his watch. "Fine." Susan led him through hallways with peeling paint to a large room where about 20 children played. When they saw William, they stopped and stared. He felt uncomfortable under their innocent gazes. "Children, this is Mr. Carter. His company donated the money for our new roof and the Christmas gifts last year," Susan explained. The children chorused a rehearsed "Thank you, Mr. Carter." William nodded stiffly. "You're welcome." A small boy at the back of the room caught William's attention. Unlike the other children who smiled politely, this boy watched him with intense, serious eyes. He was thin, with tattered clothes that were too big for his small frame. As the photographer set up for the publicity shots, William found himself looking back at the boy. There was something familiar about him that William couldn't place. "All right, Mr. Carter, if you could just stand here with the children gathered around," the photographer instructed. William went through the motions, smiling mechanically as children were positioned around him. The serious-eyed boy remained at the back, refusing to join the group. After the photos, William was ready to leave when Susan touched his arm lightly. "Mr. Carter, could I have just 1 minute of your time, in private?" William sighed. 1 minute. In her small office, Susan showed him a folder. "I know you're busy, but I wanted to tell you about a special case. This boy, Tommy Wilson, he's 7 years old. His mother is very ill, and they're about to be evicted from their apartment." William stared at the photograph clipped to the file. It was the serious-eyed boy. "Why are you telling me this?" William asked. "Tommy isn't officially in our shelter yet. He comes for meals and activities while his mother is at the hospital for treatments. But soon they'll have nowhere to go. We're at capacity and—" William cut her off. "Ms. Miller, I already donate a considerable sum to this shelter. I can't solve every sad story in this city." Susan's face fell. Of course, Mr. Carter. I understand. I just thought, my minute is up, William said, standing to leave. As William walked back through the main room, he noticed Tommy sitting alone in a corner, folding a piece of paper. Without meaning to, William found himself walking toward the boy. What are you doing? William asked. Tommy looked up, not intimidated by the tall man in the expensive suit. Making a job application. William raised an eyebrow. A job application? You're 7. I need to help my mom, Tommy said simply. She's sick and we need money. Something twisted in William's chest. Where's your father? Tommy looked down at his paper. He left. Mom says he couldn't handle being a dad. William's mind flashed to his own childhood. The cold apartment. His mother working 3 jobs, waiting for a father who never returned. She hasn't eaten in 2 days, Tommy continued. She gives me her food. William stood frozen, memories washing over him. His own mother had done the same, claiming she wasn't. Hungry when he could hear her stomach growling. Mr. Carter, your car is waiting, Nancy called from the doorway. William cleared his throat. I'm coming. As he turned to leave, Tommy held out the paper. Will you take my application, please? I can clean or carry things. William took the crumpled paper. On it, in childish handwriting, was written, Tommy Wilson, age 7, hard worker, need job to help mom. I'll look it over, William said, tucking the paper into his pocket. Back in his car, William couldn't stop thinking about the boy. He pulled out his phone. Nancy, get me information on a Tommy Wilson and his mother. They're about to be evicted and the mother is ill. Find out which hospital she's in. That evening, instead of going to his penthouse apartment, William found himself at Memorial Hospital. The nurse at the station looked surprised when he asked for Maria Wilson's room. Are you family? She asked. No, I'm a friend, William replied, feeling strange saying those words. Maria Wilson's room was small and dim. A thin woman with Tommy's same serious eyes lay in the bed, hooked up to several machines. Can I help you? She asked weakly when William entered. Mrs. Wilson, my name is William Carter. I met your son today. Maria tried to sit up. Is Tommy okay? He's fine. He's at the shelter right now. William shifted uncomfortably. He gave me a job application. Maria closed her eyes briefly. I'm sorry. He's been worried about money. I've told him he doesn't need to worry, but he's so much like his father used to be. Determined, stubborn. What's wrong with you? I mean medically, William asked. Cancer, Maria said simply. Stage 3. The treatments are expensive, and I can't work anymore. Our savings are gone. William looked around the sparse room. And the boy's father? Maria's face hardened. Left when Tommy was 3. Decided family life wasn't for him. Another memory hit William. His mother crying at night, wondering aloud how one person could just stop loving another. Without fully understanding why, William pulled out his checkbook. Mrs. Wilson, I'd like to help you and Tommy. Maria frowned. We don't need charity, Mr. Carter. It's not charity, William said firmly. It's an advance. An advance for what? William surprised himself with his next words. I'm hiring Tommy. As my assistant? Maria looked confused. He's 7 years old. Yes, well, it's a special position, created just for him. He'll help me organize things. After school, of course. Maria studied William's face. Why would you do this? You don't know us. William thought about the little boy with determination in his eyes and about himself at that age, hungry, scared, watching his mother waste away from working too hard. Let's just say I see potential in your son, William replied. Back in his car, William called Nancy. I want you to pay Maria Wilson's hospital bills, all of them, and find them a decent apartment, paid for a year in advance. Nancy was silent for a moment. May I ask what this is about, sir? William looked out at the city lights. I'm hiring a new assistant. But I'm your assistant, Nancy said, confused. This is different. Just do it, Nancy. The next day, William returned to the shelter. Tommy was sitting in the same corner making another paper job application. When he saw William, his eyes widened. You came back, Tommy said. William nodded. I did. I have some news for you. Tommy stood up straighter. About my job application. Yes, I've decided to hire you, William said, feeling strangely nervous. As my special assistant. Tommy's face lit up. Really, what will I do? You'll help me see things differently, William replied, surprising himself again. But first, I visited your mother yesterday. She's going to be moved to a better hospital. Room today. Tommy's eyes filled with tears. You saw my mom? Yes. And I'm taking care of your apartment situation too. No more eviction. Tommy stared at William in disbelief. Why are you helping us? William knelt down to Tommy's level, something he couldn't remember doing for anyone in years. Because a long time ago I was just like you, and no one helped me. For the first time in decades, William felt something crack open inside his chest. Something he thought had died when he was a boy watching his mother struggle alone. It was uncomfortable and almost painful, like a limb waking up after being numb for too long. As Tommy threw his small arms around William's neck in gratitude, William realized with a shock that what he was feeling was his heart, breaking and healing at the same time. 2 weeks had passed since William's unexpected decision to help Tommy and his mother. Maria Wilson had been moved to the best private room in the hospital, with top specialists overseeing her treatment. William had found them a comfortable 2-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood, not too far from Tommy's school. William sat at his desk, reviewing contracts, when Nancy knocked on his door. Mr. Carter, your new assistant is here for his first day, Nancy said, unable to hide her curiosity about this strange arrangement. William straightened his tie nervously. Send him in. Tommy walked into the office wearing new clothes, jeans and a button-up shirt that Susan from the shelter had helped him pick out. His hair was neatly combed, and his shoes were no longer worn at the edges. But his eyes still held that same serious determination. Hello, Mr. Carter, Tommy said, his small voice echoing in the large office. Hello, Tommy, how's your mother doing? Tommy's face brightened. She says the new doctors are really nice, and she likes the apartment a lot. She cried when she saw it. William nodded, uncomfortable with the gratitude. Good. That's good. An awkward silence fell between them. William suddenly realized he hadn't actually planned what Tommy would do at the office. The boy was staring at him expectantly. Well, I suppose we should get to work, William said, clearing his throat. Your job will be to help me organize these files. He pointed to a stack of folders on a side table. Tommy approached the table. What do I do with them? Just put them in alphabetical order. Tommy nodded seriously and got to work, his small fingers carefully sorting through the papers. William watched him for a moment, then returned to his own work. Every few minutes he found himself glancing over at the boy, who was intensely focused on his task. The intercom on William's desk buzzed. Mr. Carter, the board members are waiting in the conference room, Nancy's voice announced. William stood up. Tommy, I have a meeting. You stay here and keep working on those files. I'll be back soon. Tommy nodded without looking up. In the conference room, William found it hard to concentrate. James Peterson was presenting projections for the Miller acquisition, but William's mind kept drifting back to his office where a 7-year-old boy was sorting his files. Mr. Carter? James prompted. Your thoughts on moving forward? William blinked. Sorry, what was the question? The executives exchanged glances. William Carter never lost focus during meetings. The Miller family, James repeated. They're still refusing our offer. I suggested we leak some negative stories to the press about their company's stability, drive down their stock value so we can buy at an even lower price. William frowned. The Millers have run that company for 3 generations. It employs over 500 people. Yes, but business is business, James replied smoothly. Once we acquire them, we'll streamline operations, cut the workforce by about half. 250 people will lose their jobs, William said slowly. James shrugged. That's progress, sir. You've always said that sentiment has no place in business. William stared at the documents in front of him, seeing not numbers but faces, people with families, with children like Tommy. I need more time to review this, William said, standing abruptly. Meeting adjourned. The executives looked shocked as William left the room. In 15 years, he had never delayed an acquisition decision. When William returned to his office, he found Tommy sitting in his big leather chair, legs dangling, reading a business magazine. I finished the files, Tommy said. They're in alpha-beta-cal order now. William couldn't help smiling at the mispronunciation. Alphabetical. That's what I said, Tommy replied confidently. William sat down across from Tommy. Do you know what alphabetical means? Tommy nodded. It means A, B, C, D, like the alphabet. My mom taught me. Your mom seems like a smart woman. She is, Tommy said proudly. She used to work at a big company before she got sick. She did numbers. An accountant. Yeah, that's it, Tommy confirmed. She always says numbers tell the truth if you know how to listen to them. William raised an eyebrow. That's an interesting way to put it. Mr. Carter, Tommy said suddenly, are you rich? William was taken aback by the direct question. I suppose I am, yes. Then why do you look sad all the time? The question hit William like a punch to the gut. What makes you think I'm sad? Tommy shrugged. Your eyes, they look like my mom's eyes when she's thinking about Dad leaving. William stared at the boy. How could a 7-year-old see what no one else had noticed? I'm not sad, William said defensively. I'm busy. My mom says being busy is sometimes a way to hide from being sad. William changed the subject quickly. It's lunchtime. Are you hungry? Tommy nodded eagerly. William pressed the intercom. Nancy, order lunch for 2. Whatever the special is at Giovanni's. When the food arrived, William watched as Tommy carefully spread his napkin on his lap and waited for William to start eating first. These small moments of politeness touched William unexpectedly. Where did you learn your manners? William asked. My mum, Tommy replied between bites of pasta. She says good manners don't cost anything, but they're worth a lot. Your mother is very wise. Tommy twirled spaghetti around his fork. Can I ask you something, Mr. Carter? Go ahead. Do you have a family? William put down his fork. No, I don't. Why not? I never found the right time, William said, uncomfortable with the personal questions. Mom says time doesn't find you, you have to find it, Tommy said matter-of-factly. William changed the subject again. How's school going? Tommy's face fell slightly. It's okay. Some kids make fun of me because my clothes were old. But now I have new clothes, so maybe they'll stop. William felt a flash of anger. Who makes fun of you? Just some boys, the ones with fancy shoes and video games. They say I'm poor. William remembered similar taunts from his own childhood. The shame of worn clothes and free lunch tickets. Being poor isn't something to be ashamed of, Tommy, William said firmly. I was poor once, you know. Tommy's eyes widened. Really? But you're so rich now. I worked very hard, William explained. But sometimes I think I forgot some important things along the way. Like what? William hesitated. Like enjoying simple things, having friends, making time for people. After lunch, William had another meeting scheduled, but he found himself reluctant to leave Tommy alone again. Would you like to come to this meeting with me? William asked impulsively. Tommy's face lit up. Can I? Yes, but you have to sit quietly and just listen, okay? Tommy nodded solemnly. The marketing team looked surprised when William walked into the conference room with a small boy trailing behind him. Tommy sat in a chair in the corner, his legs swinging, watching everything with curious eyes. During the presentation about a new advertising campaign, William found himself considering things he never had before. Is this product good for families? Would it help people like Tommy and his mother? Or am I just making more money for myself? When the team suggested an aggressive marketing strategy that would primarily target low-income, families with high-interest credit options, William glanced at Tommy. No, William said firmly. We need to rethink this. I don't want to target vulnerable people who can't afford these interest rates. The marketing director looked confused. But sir, that's where the highest profit margins are. Find another way, William insisted. One that doesn't take advantage of people who are already struggling. After the meeting, as they walked back to his office, William noticed Tommy looking up at him with a smile. What? William asked. You helped those people, didn't you? The ones they were talking about. William was startled by the boy's perception. I suppose I did. That's what my mom says we should do. Help people when we can. That evening, instead of working late as usual, William decided to drive Tommy home. When they pulled up to the new apartment building, Tommy asked, Do you want to come in and say hi to my mom? She's home from the hospital for a few days. William hesitated. I don't want to intrude. What's intrude? It means to bother someone when they're not expecting you. Tommy shook his head. You won't be bothering us? Mom wants to thank you anyway. Reluctantly, William followed Tommy into the building. The apartment was modest but comfortable, far nicer than anything William had lived in as a child. Maria Wilson was sitting on the couch, looking pale, but much better than she had in the hospital. When she saw William, she tried to stand. Please, don't get up, William said quickly. Mr. Carter, Maria said, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for us. William shifted uncomfortably. There's no need for thanks. Tommy is a good worker. Tommy beamed at the compliment. I put files in Alpha Beta Cal order today. Alphabetical, Maria corrected gently. And did you say thank you to Mr. Carter for the opportunity? Thank you, Mr. Carter, Tommy said obediently. Tommy, why don't you go wash up for dinner, Maria suggested. When Tommy had left the room, Maria turned to William. Mr. Carter, I don't understand why you're doing all this for us, but I want you to know how grateful I am. William sat down across from her. Mrs. Wilson, please call me Maria. Maria then, I grew up in circumstances similar to Tommy's. My father left when I was 6. My mother worked herself to exhaustion trying to provide for me. She died when I was 15, and I was on my own after that. Maria's eyes softened. I'm so sorry. I promised myself I would never be poor again, William continued. I focused on making money, building my company. I thought that was all that mattered. And now? Maria asked gently. William looked toward the hallway where Tommy had disappeared. Now I'm not so sure, your son. He reminds me of myself at that age, but he has something I lost a long time ago. What's that? Hope, kindness, the ability to see good in people. William ran a hand through his hair. I don't know why I'm telling you all this, Maria smiled. Sometimes we need to say things out loud to understand them ourselves. William nodded. Your son mentioned you were an accountant? Yes, at Harrington Financial, before the cancer. Are you planning to go back to work when you recover? Maria's smile faded. If I recover, and if anyone will hire me after such a long absence. When you recover, William corrected firmly. And I happen to need a new head of accounting at Carter Industries. Maria's eyes widened. Mr. Carter, you don't have to. It's not charity, William interrupted. From what Tommy tells me, you understand that numbers tell the truth if you know how to listen to them. That's exactly the kind of thinking I need in my company. For the first time in years, William felt he was making a business decision based on something other than cold profit calculations. It felt strange but not unpleasant. Tommy bounded back into the room. Mom, can Mr. Carter stay for dinner? We're having spaghetti. I helped make the sauce before you came home from the hospital. Maria looked at William questioningly. I don't want to impose, William said. Please stay, Maria said. It's the least we can. To that evening, sitting at a small kitchen table eating spaghetti with Tommy and Maria, William experienced something he hadn't felt since childhood, the warmth of being part of a family dinner. Tommy chattered about his day at the office, embellishing his file organizing accomplishments into heroic feats that made both adults laugh. As William drove home to his empty penthouse later that night, he realized that for the first time in as long as he could remember, he hadn't thought about work or money or power for an entire evening. Instead, he had simply enjoyed the company of a brave little boy and his equally courageous mother, and strangely, he felt richer for it. A month had passed since Tommy became William's special assistant. The arrangement had settled into a comfortable routine. 3 days a week after school, Tommy would come to the office, where Nancy would help him with his homework before he spent time with William. The changes in William Carter had not gone unnoticed at Carter Industries. Employees whispered about how the boss now sometimes smiled in the hallways. Board members exchanged concerned glances when William questioned aggressive business tactics he would have championed just weeks earlier. On a Thursday afternoon, William was reviewing financial reports when James Peterson knocked on his open door. Do you have a minute, sir? James asked, his face tight with concern. William gestured to the chair across from his desk. What is it, James? It's about the Miller acquisition. We're losing our window of opportunity. Their stock has actually started to rise since we backed off. William leaned back in his chair. I've been thinking about that. What if we approached them with a partnership proposal instead of a hostile takeover? James looked stunned. A partnership? But that would mean sharing profits, letting them keep control of the company they built, William finished. Yes, it would. And it would also mean those 500 employees keep their jobs. Sir, forgive me for speaking plainly, but this isn't like you, James said carefully. The board is concerned about some of your recent decisions. William's eyes narrowed. What decisions specifically? The new employee health insurance upgrade, the tuition assistance program, the daycare center you've approved for the building. James counted them off on his fingers. And now you want to partner with a company we could easily crush and absorb. And these are bad things because they're cutting into our profit margins, James stated flatly. The shareholders are worried. William stood and walked to the window. James, do you know why I started this company? To make money, of course. William shook his head. That's what I tell myself now. But originally it was because I wanted to create something that would last, something meaningful after a childhood where I had nothing. James shifted uncomfortably. Sir, I don't see what your childhood has to do with... I forgot that somewhere. Along the way, William continued, ignoring the interruption, I forgot that a company is made of people, not just profit margins. The board meeting is tomorrow, James said stiffly. They'll want answers about this new direction. After James left, William sat thinking about the confrontation ahead. The door cracked open and Tommy peeked in. Mr. Carter, Nancy said I should wait, but I finished my homework early. William smiled, his mood instantly lighter. Come in, Tommy. How was school today? Tommy hopped into the chair across from William. Good. I got an A on my math test. And guess what? Billy Thompson, he's the one who used to make fun of my old clothes. He asked if I wanted to come to his birthday party next weekend. That's great, Tommy. Are you going to go? Tommy's smile dimmed a little. I don't know. Mum's treatment is that day. Her doctor says she needs someone to bring her home. After, William immediately said, I can take your mother to her treatment. You should go to the party. Tommy's eyes widened. Really? You'd do that? Of course, that's what friends do for each other. The word friends felt strange on William's tongue, but also right somehow. Thanks, Mr. Carter. Tommy's face suddenly turned serious. You looked sad when I came in. Did something bad happen? William sighed. Nothing for you to worry about. Just some disagreements about how to run the company. Tommy considered. This. My mum says when people disagree, you should listen twice as much as you talk. William chuckled. Your mother is a very wise woman. She's feeling better, you know. The doctors say the new medicine is working. Relief flooded through William. He had been getting regular updates from Maria's doctors, but hearing it from Tommy made it more real. That's the best news I've heard all day. She's going to start work soon too, Tommy said proudly. At your company, like you said. She's excited but nervous too. William had arranged for Maria to start part-time in the accounting department as soon as her doctors approved. She'll do wonderfully. Tommy swung his legs back and forth. Can I ask you something, Mr. Carter? Of course. Do you have a Christmas tree at your house? The question caught William off guard. No, I don't. I usually spend Christmas working. Tommy looked horrified. Working? On Christmas? But what about presents and cookies and stuff? William couldn't remember the last time he'd celebrated Christmas properly. I guess I haven't had anyone to celebrate with. You can celebrate with us this year, Tommy said, as if it were the most obvious solution in the world. Mom makes the best Christmas cookies, and we always watch movies and put up a tree. Before William could respond, Nancy buzzed on the intercom. Mr. Carter, Richard Miller is on line 1. William's eyebrows shot up in surprise. He hadn't expected to hear from the owner of Miller Manufacturing this soon. I need to take this call, Tommy. It's important. Tommy nodded and reached for one of the business magazines on William's desk. William picked up the phone. Richard, this is unexpected. Richard Miller's gruff voice came through the line. Carter, I've been hearing some strange rumors about you going soft. Thought I'd call and see if they're true. William glanced at Tommy, who was pretending not to listen. I wouldn't say soft. Let's call it evolving. There was a pause on the line. I've also heard you might be interested in a partnership rather than swallowing us whole. I'm open to discussing it, William confirmed. Another long pause. My father would never forgive me for selling the company outright. It's been in our family for generations. I understand that better than I used to, William said honestly. Lunch tomorrow to discuss terms, Richard suggested. I'll have my assistant set it up. After hanging up, William noticed Tommy watching him with interest. Was that an important business call? The boy asked. Very important. It might change how we do things around here. That evening, instead of working late, William decided to visit Maria. He found himself doing this more often lately, stopping by their apartment to check on her progress or sometimes just to talk. She was sitting on the couch when he arrived, looking through job training materials William had sent over. You're looking well, William said, genuinely pleased to see some color in her cheeks. Maria smiled. I'm feeling stronger every day. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. William sat across from her. Tommy mentioned you're nervous about starting work. Maria sighed. It's been a long time since I've been in an office environment, and to start at Carter Industries of all places, it's intimidating. You'll do fine, William assured her. And if anyone gives you trouble, they'll have me to answer to. Maria laughed softly. My own personal billionaire bodyguard. Their eyes met, and William felt an unexpected warmth spread through his chest. He cleared his throat. Tommy mentioned you have a treatment scheduled this weekend. He's been invited to a birthday party the same day. Oh, Maria's face fell. I'll have to call the doctor and reschedule. Tommy's been so excited about making new friends. There's no need to reschedule, William interrupted. I've already told Tommy I'd take you. Maria looked surprised. William, you don't have to do that. You've already done so much for us. It was the first time she had called him by his first name, and William found he liked the sound of it. I want to, he said simply. Maria studied his face. You've changed since the first time we met in that hospital room. William nodded. Tommy has been good for me, you both have. It goes both ways, Maria replied softly. I've never seen Tommy so happy, even with everything we've been through. He talks about you constantly. William felt a surge of something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of belonging. He invited me to spend Christmas with you both, Maria smiled. And will you? If you'll have me, William said, surprised by how much he wanted her to say yes. We'd be honored, Maria replied. Though I should warn you, our celebration isn't fancy, just homemade decorations and simple gifts. It sounds perfect, William said honestly. The next day, the board meeting was as contentious as William had expected. James Peterson led the charge. Mr. Carter, while we respect your authority as CEO and founder, we feel these recent changes are taking the company in a risky direction, James stated, backed by nods from several board members. William remained calm. What risks specifically concern you? The increased employee benefits reduce our competitive edge in the market, one board member said. The partnership approach with Miller Manufacturing will yield lower profits than an acquisition, added another. William listened to their concerns without interrupting. When they had finished, he stood up slowly. For 15 years, I've run this company with one goal, maximum profit, William began, and we've been successful. But at what cost? High employee turnover, a reputation for ruthlessness, and personally, I've sacrificed any semblance of a real life. The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. I recently met someone who reminded me why I started this company in the first place, William continued, not just to make money, but to create something meaningful, something that improves lives, not just bottom lines. That's all very noble, James interjected, but our responsibility is to our shareholders. Is it? William challenged. What about our responsibility to our employees, to our customers, to the communities where we operate? He pulled out a folder and distributed documents to each board member. These are projections for the next 5 years under our new approach. Yes, profit margins will be slightly lower initially, but employee retention will increase, reducing training costs. Our corporate image will improve, attracting new customers who care about ethics, and partnerships like the one with Miller will open doors that have been closed to us because of our aggressive reputation. The board members reviewed the numbers in silence. Change is always uncomfortable, William concluded, but sometimes it's necessary. I believe this new direction will make us stronger in the long run, not just financially, but as an organization we can all be proud of. After the meeting, Richard Miller arrived for their lunch. William took him to his private dining room on the top floor of the building. I have to admit, Carter, Richard said as they discussed terms, I never thought I'd see the day when you'd propose a fair partnership. Your reputation precedes you. William smiled wryly. Reputations can change. As they shook hands on the preliminary agreement, the door to the dining room opened and Tommy peeked in. Sorry, Mr. Carter, Tommy said. Nancy said you were done with your meeting. Richard looked curiously at the boy. William gestured for Tommy to come in. Richard, this is my special assistant, Tommy Wilson. Tommy, this is Mr. Miller, the owner. Of Miller Manufacturing. Tommy shook Richard's hand solemnly. Nice to meet you, sir. Richard looked between the boy and William with newfound understanding. So this is why William Carter is suddenly interested in preserving family businesses and jobs. William put a hand on Tommy's shoulder. Let's just say I've gained some perspective on what really matters. After Richard left, promising to have his lawyers review the partnership agreement, William took Tommy for ice cream in the company cafeteria. Did your important business meeting go well? Tommy asked, digging into his chocolate sundae. It did. We're going to work together instead of fighting. Tommy nodded approvingly. Mom says cooperation is better than competition. Your mother is. Right again, William agreed. That weekend, William found himself in the waiting room of the oncology department while Maria received her treatment. He had brought his laptop intending to work, but instead found himself thinking about the changes in his life over the past months. The doctor approached him with a smile. Mr. Carter, Mrs. Wilson is ready to go home now. Maria walked out slowly, looking tired but determined. William took her arm gently to steady her. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck, Maria admitted. But the doctor says my numbers are improving. In the car, Maria leaned her head back against the seat. Thank you for doing this, William. It means a lot to Tommy to be able to go to that party. It's my pleasure, William said, surprised to find he meant it completely. At the apartment, William helped Maria to the couch. Can I get you anything? Tea? Something to eat? Just some company, if you're not too busy, Maria said. Tommy won't be home for a few hours. William sat beside her. I'm never too busy for you anymore. Maria turned to look at him, her eyes searching his face. Why did you really help us, William? The truth. William took a deep breath. When I saw Tommy that day at the shelter, it was like seeing myself at that age. But there was one crucial difference. I had become exactly the kind of man my father was. Cold, distant, caring only about money and success. You're nothing like that, Maria objected. I was, William insisted. For years I built walls around myself. I told myself I was protecting the boy who had nothing, but really I was just becoming the very thing that had hurt me. Maria reached out and took his hand. But you changed. William looked down at their joined hands. Because of Tommy, because of you. You both reminded me of what's really important. And what's that? Maria asked softly. Connection, family, love. The last word caught in William's throat. Maria's eyes filled with tears. Tommy adores you, you know. He told me the other day that he wishes you were his dad. William felt his heart constrict. I never thought I'd want to be anyone's father. I was afraid I'd be like my own dad, that I'd fail. You could never fail, Tommy, Maria said with certainty. You've already shown him what it means to be a good man. William found himself moving closer to Maria. And what about you? What have I shown you? That people can change, Maria whispered. That second chances exist. When Tommy returned from the birthday party, excited and full of stories, he found William and Maria sitting close together on the couch, talking softly, their hands still intertwined. The boy's face lit up with a knowing smile. Later that night, after Tommy had gone to bed, William stood to leave. At the door, he turned to Maria. I was thinking, there's an experimental treatment in Boston that's showing promising results. For cases like yours, I'd like to arrange for you to be evaluated for it. Maria started to protest, but William gently placed a finger on her lips. "Please, Maria, let me do this. I can't imagine my life without you and Tommy in it anymore." Maria's eyes widened at the implication of his words. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay." As William drove home to his penthouse, he realized with perfect clarity that his definition of success had completely changed. The balance sheets and profit margins that had once been his only measure of worth now seemed hollow compared to the warmth of Tommy's smile and the touch of Maria's hand. In his office the next morning, William called Nancy in. "I need you to clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks." Nancy looked shocked. "2 weeks, sir, but the quarterly reports—" "James can handle them," William said decisively. "I'm taking Maria Wilson to Boston for a medical consultation, and I'm bringing Tommy along too." Nancy smiled knowingly. "I'll make all the arrangements, and sir, it's good to see you like this." "Like what?" "Happy," Nancy said simply. As William prepared for the trip, he thought about the chain of events that had led him here. One small boy with determination in his eyes had cracked open the frozen heart of a man who thought he had everything, only to discover he had nothing that truly mattered. Until now. The Boston specialist's office was elegant, but comfortable. William sat beside Maria, holding her hand while the doctor reviewed her test results. Tommy was in the waiting room with Nancy, who had insisted on coming along to help. Dr. Reynolds, a world-renowned oncologist, looked up from the file with a thoughtful expression. "Mrs. Wilson, I believe you're an excellent candidate for our new treatment protocol." Maria squeezed William's hand tightly. "What are the chances of success? With your specific type of cancer and current health status, I'd estimate a 70% chance of complete remission." William felt a surge of hope. "When can she start?" "We could begin as early as next week," Dr. Reynolds said. "However, I must be clear, this is an intensive treatment. Mrs. Wilson would need to stay in Boston for at least 3 months with treatments 5 days a week." Maria's face fell. 3 months? I can't be away from Tommy that long, and I'm supposed to start my new job soon." William turned to face her. "Maria, your health comes first. We'll figure everything else out." Outside in the hallway after the appointment, Maria leaned against the wall, overwhelmed. "William, I don't know if I can do this. The logistics alone. Tommy's school where we would stay." William took both her hands in his. "Maria, listen to me. Tommy can enroll in a school here temporarily. I'll rent an apartment near the hospital. I can work remotely when needed. We'll make this work." Maria looked up at him, eyes wide. William, this isn't your responsibility." "Isn't it?" William's voice was soft but firm. "Maria, you and Tommy have become the most important people in my life. I want to be there for both of you through this." Tears filled Maria's eyes. "Why? We've turned your life upside down." William smiled. "In the best possible way. Before you and Tommy, I had everything money could buy, but nothing that truly mattered. Now I understand what real wealth is." When they told Tommy about the treatment plan, the boys' reaction surprised them both. "So we're moving to Boston for a while?" Tommy asked, processing the information. "Yes, for about 3 months, Maria explained cautiously. "You'll have to change schools temporarily." Tommy looked thoughtful. "Will Mr. Carter come too?" William and Maria exchanged glances. "I'll be there as much as possible," William assured him. Tommy's face brightened. "Like a family trip?" The simple question hung in the air between the adults. William found himself saying, "Yes, Tommy, like a family." Back in New York, William called an emergency board meeting to explain his plans. "I'll be working remotely from Boston for the next 3 months," he announced. "James will handle day-to-day operations here, but I'll be available for all major decisions and weekly video conferences." James Peterson looked both concerned and confused. "May I ask why you need to be in Boston, sir?" William took a deep breath. "Maria Wilson, our new accounting department employee, has been accepted into an experimental cancer treatment program there. I'm going to be supporting her and her son through the process." The room fell silent as the board members absorbed this unexpected information. Finally, Margaret Chen, the oldest board member, spoke up. "William, I've served on this board for 12 years. In that time, I've watched you build this company with single-minded determination, often at the expense of your personal life." She smiled warmly. It's good to see you finally finding balance. Not everyone was as supportive. James cornered William after the meeting. This is highly irregular, sir. Your personal involvement with an employee could create liability issues. For the company, William's eyes narrowed. Maria's position has nothing to do with my personal feelings, James. She's qualified, and her employment was arranged before any personal relationship developed. Even so, James persisted, your extended absence will create instability. Or, William countered, it will give the executive team a chance to prove themselves, including you, James. 2 weeks later, William stood in the living room of a spacious apartment he had rented in Boston, just 3 blocks from the hospital. Tommy ran from room to room, excited about the temporary adventure. This one can be my room, he called from down the hall. It has a view of the park. Maria walked slowly around the living room, still weak from her first treatment. William, this place must cost a fortune. William shrugged. What good is money if you can't use it to take care of the people you care about? Maria sat down on the couch, looking serious. We need to talk about this arrangement. William sat beside her. What about it? These boundaries seem blurry. Are you my employer, my friend, Tommy's mentor? Maria struggled to find the right words. I'm grateful for everything you've done, but I need to understand what this is. William took her hand. What do you want it to be, Maria? She looked into his eyes. I'm afraid to say. Don't be, William encouraged softly. We've come too far for anything but honesty between us. Maria took a deep breath. When David left us, I promised myself I would never depend on anyone again. I had to be strong for Tommy. But then you came into our lives and everything changed. For me too, William admitted. I'm scared, William, Maria whispered. What if the treatments don't work? What if I've let Tommy become attached to you and then… William put a finger to her lips. No what ifs. We deal with what is. Right now you're fighting, and I'm here. Tommy is happy. That's all that matters. Maria leaned against his shoulder, exhausted but comforted. One day at a time, then, William nodded. One day at a time. As weeks passed, they fell into a routine. William would take Tommy to his new school each morning, then work from the apartment or a nearby cafe until it was time to pick Maria up from her treatments. In the evenings, they would have dinner together, help Tommy with homework, and sometimes watch movies as a trio on the couch. It felt strangely normal, as if they had been a family for years instead of months. One evening, after Tommy had gone to bed, William found Maria looking through old photographs. What are you thinking about? He asked, sitting beside her. Maria showed him a picture of herself with Tommy as a baby. How quickly life changes. A year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer, struggling to pay rent, afraid of leaving Tommy alone in the world. And now, William prompted. Now I have hope, Maria said simply. For the first time in years, I'm thinking about the future. William's phone rang, interrupting the moment. He looked at the screen and frowned. It's James. I should take this. In the kitchen, William answered the call. James, it's late. What's so urgent? James's voice was tense. Sir, we have a situation. The Miller partnership is being challenged. Their CFO is claiming we misrepresented our intentions. He's threatening to walk away from the deal. William pinched the bridge of his nose, which would leave them vulnerable to a hostile takeover by Harrington Financial. Exactly. They're demanding you come back to New York for an emergency meeting tomorrow. William glanced toward the living room where Maria was still looking through photos. That's not possible, James. Maria has an important treatment tomorrow. Sir, with all due respect, this partnership was your idea. Your new vision for the company. If it falls apart, I understand the stakes, William interrupted. Set up a video conference instead. They've specifically requested you in person, James insisted. They say it's a matter of trust. After hanging up, William returned to the living room, his expression troubled. Business problems? Maria asked, immediately sensing his distress. William nodded. The Miller partnership is in trouble. They want me back in New York tomorrow for an emergency meeting. Then you should go, Maria said without hesitation. William shook his head. You have your treatment tomorrow. Dr. Reynolds said it's a crucial one. William, Maria said gently, I've been handling these treatments for weeks now. I'll be fine for one day without you. But this partnership is important to you, Maria insisted. It represents the changes you're trying to make at your company. You should be there to defend it. William felt torn between his old life and his new one. I promised I'd be here for you and Tommy. And you have been, Maria assured him. Every single day. Now let us be here for you by understanding that sometimes you need to be somewhere else. The next morning, William boarded his private jet back to New York, feeling strangely anxious about leaving Maria and Tommy, even for a day. As the plane took off, he realized how completely his priorities had shifted. The business crisis that would have been his sole focus months ago now seemed secondary to his concern for Maria's treatment. At Carter Industries, the mood was tense. Richard Miller and his executive team sat on one side of the conference table, looking grim. William's team sat on the other, with James looking particularly uncomfortable. Richard, William began, I understand there are concerns about our partnership agreement. Richard nodded curtly. My CFO believes your company is positioning for a delayed takeover. That this partnership is just a smokescreen. William frowned. That's absolutely untrue. I gave you my word. Words are cheap in business, Richard's CFO interjected, especially from a man known for ruthless acquisitions. William took a deep breath. I understand your skepticism. My reputation precedes me. But people can change when they find something more important than money and power. And what might that be? Richard asked, genuinely curious. William thought of Maria and Tommy. Family. Connection. A chance to make a real difference in someone's life. He pulled out a new contract from his briefcase. To prove my sincerity, I've drafted a revised agreement. It includes a non-acquisition clause that would prevent Carter Industries from attempting to purchase Miller Manufacturing for a minimum of 10 years. Richard's eyebrows shot up in surprise. That's unusual. I'm not interested in taking over your company, Richard, William said earnestly. I want us to work together, combining our strengths while preserving what makes each company unique, including the Miller family legacy. By evening, the crisis had been resolved. The new agreement was even stronger than the original, with both sides feeling more secure in their partnership. As William prepared to return to Boston, James approached. Sir, may I speak frankly? William nodded. Always. When you first started changing company policies and talking about partnerships instead of acquisitions, I thought you were having some kind of midlife crisis, James admitted. But today, watching you negotiate with the Millers, I saw something different. What was that? William asked. Authenticity, James replied. You truly believe in this new approach. It's not just talk, William smiled. Thank you for recognizing that, James. The board is coming around too, James added. The preliminary numbers for this quarter are actually showing increased productivity since the new employee benefits were implemented. Turns out happy employees work harder. Who knew? William laughed. Indeed, who knew? Back in Boston that night, William found Tommy still awake, waiting for him. How did your business meeting go? Tommy asked, sitting up in bed. Very well, William answered, sitting on the edge of the bed. How was your mom's treatment today? Tommy's face clouded. She was really tired after. The doctor said that's normal, but it was scary. I'm glad you're back. William smoothed Tommy's hair. Me too, buddy. I missed you both. Tommy looked up at William with serious eyes. Can I ask you something important? Of course. Do you love my mom? The direct question took William by surprise. After a moment, he nodded. Yes, Tommy, I do. And do you love me too? William's throat tightened with emotion. Very much. Tommy smiled. Good, because we love you too. Mom was crying today, after her treatment, and she said she's afraid to love you because of what my dad did. But I told her you're not like him. You wouldn't leave us. William took Tommy's small hand in his. Your mom is very wise to be careful with her heart, but you're right. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? Tommy asked. I promise, William said, firmly. The next morning, William took Tommy to school, then returned to the apartment to work. Maria was still sleeping, exhausted from yesterday's treatment. Around noon, she emerged from her bedroom looking pale but determined. You're back, she said with a small smile. William stood up from his laptop. Got in late last night. Tommy. Told me the treatment was rough yesterday. Maria nodded. The doctor says that's actually a good sign. It means the medicine is working. William guided her to the couch. Can I get you anything? Tea? Something to eat? Just sit with me for a minute, Maria requested. As they sat together, Maria turned to face him. Tommy says he asked you something important last night. William nodded. He did. And what did you tell him? Maria asked softly. The truth, William said simply. That I love both of you. Maria's eyes filled with tears. William, I'm scared. Not just of the cancer, but of this, of us. The last man I trusted with my heart abandoned us when things got difficult. William took her hands in his. Maria, I spent 20 years of my life being afraid to connect with anyone. I built walls so high around my heart that I forgot what it felt like to care about someone else. Then Tommy walked into my office with that job application and everything changed. Maria smiled through her tears. He has that effect on people. So do you, William countered. Maria, I can't promise that everything will be perfect. I can't even promise that the treatments will work, though I believe with all my heart that they will. But I can promise that whatever happens, I will be right here beside you and Tommy. You are my family now, in every way that matters. Maria leaned forward and kissed him softly. We still have so much to figure out. William smiled. We have time. 2 months later, Dr. Reynolds called them into his office with the latest test results. William and Maria sat side by side, hands clasped tightly as the doctor reviewed the charts. Mrs. Wilson, Dr. Reynolds said finally, the treatments have been remarkably effective. The tumors have reduced in size by over 90%, and there's no sign of new growth. Maria gasped. Does that mean? It means we're on the right track, Dr. Reynolds confirmed. 1 more month of treatment, and I believe we can officially declare you in remission. In the hallway outside, Maria collapsed into William's arms, sobbing with relief. William held her tightly, his own eyes wet with tears. I told you, he whispered into her hair. I told you we would get through this. That evening, they celebrated with a special dinner at the apartment. Tommy, who had been informed of the good news, was bouncing with excitement. So after 1 more month, Mum will be all better, and then we can go home, he asked. William and Maria exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed what would happen after the treatments ended. Yes, the doctors think 1 more month should do it, Maria confirmed. As for going home, we need to talk about that. Later, after Tommy was in bed, William and Maria sat on the small balcony of the apartment, looking out at the Boston skyline. So, William began hesitantly, what are your thoughts about what happens next? Maria turned to him. Honestly, I'm not sure. The apartment in New York is lovely, and my job at Carter Industries is waiting for me. But these past 3 months here, living together like this, it's felt right, William finished for her. Maria nodded. But is it practical? You're the CEO of a major company. You can't work remotely forever. William took her hand. What if I told you I've been thinking about making some changes, restructuring the company leadership to give myself more flexibility? Maria looked surprised. You would do that? For us? In a heartbeat, William said without hesitation. But there's something else we need to consider. What's that? William reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I had planned to wait until your treatments were completely finished, but after today's news... Maria's eyes widened as William opened the box to reveal a beautiful diamond ring. Maria Wilson, William said, his voice thick with emotion. You and Tommy have given me the greatest gift possible. A second chance at life, at love, at family. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Maria stared at the ring, then at William's face. William, are you sure? Your life was so different before us. Empty, William corrected. My life was empty before you and Tommy. Now it's full. That little boy who came looking for a job to help his mom didn't just find employment. He found me. He broke through walls I'd spent decades building. And you, with your strength and your kindness, showed me what real courage looks like. Maria took his face in her hands. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I will marry you. As they embraced under the stars, William thought about the strange journey that had brought him here. From a lonely boy determined never to be poor again, to a wealthy man who had everything but happiness, to this moment, holding the woman he loved, with a son waiting in the next room who would soon be his in every way that mattered. 3 weeks. Later, William stood in the doorway of Tommy's room in the Boston apartment, watching the boy pack his toys. "Need any help, buddy?" William asked. Tommy looked up with a grin. "I'm almost done. Are we really moving into your big house in New York?" "Our house now," William corrected. "And yes, as soon as your mom finishes her last treatment next week, we're heading home." Tommy abandoned his packing and came to sit beside William. "Can I ask you something?" William smiled. "You know you can ask me anything. After you and Mom get married, will it be okay if I call you Dad?" William felt his heart swell with emotion. "Nothing would make me prouder, Tommy." The boy beamed and threw his arms around William's neck. "I knew it. I told Mom that you were the daddy we've been waiting for." William hugged him tightly, thinking of the day that small, determined boy had walked into his office with a job application. "And you, Tommy Wilson, were the son I never knew I needed." In New York, the Carter building was decorated with flowers and ribbons. The entire staff had gathered in the main lobby, where a small ceremony was taking place. William stood at the front, Tommy beside him as his best man, both wearing matching suits. When Maria appeared at the entrance, radiant in a simple white dress, a collective sigh went through the crowd. Her hair had grown back after the treatments, short but elegant, and her face glowed with happiness and health. Dr. Reynolds had given her the official news just yesterday: complete remission. As she walked toward William, he marveled at how different his life was from just 1 year ago. The ruthless businessman, who cared only about profit margins and power, now understood the true meaning of wealth. After they exchanged their vows, the new family stood together as colleagues and friends. Applauded. Nancy wiped tears from her eyes. Even James Peterson seemed moved by the ceremony. Richard Miller, who had become both a business partner and friend, approached them with champagne. "To new beginnings," he toasted, "and to the little boy who changed William Carter." William looked down at Tommy, who was proudly holding both adults' hands. "He didn't just change me," William corrected, "he saved me." Later that evening, in the garden of William's, now their home, the three of them sat together watching the sunset. Tommy had fallen asleep between them, exhausted from the excitement of the day. "Mrs. Carter," William said softly, trying out. "The new name," Maria smiled. "It still sounds strange but wonderful." "Any regrets?" William asked. Maria shook her head. "Not a single one, though I still can't believe how it all started, with Tommy marching into your office, determined to find a job." William looked down at the sleeping boy. "The most important job interview of my life." "How so?" Maria asked. William smiled. "He wasn't applying to work for me. He was interviewing me for the position of father and husband. I just didn't know it at the time." Maria leaned over Tommy to kiss William gently. "And you got the job." "The best job I've ever had," William agreed, looking at his new family with wonder. "The only one that really matters." As darkness fell, the three of them remained together on the garden bench, a family created not by blood but by love, courage, and the determination of a little boy who had walked into an office one day looking for a job and instead found a home. The end.